live. We are live. Welcome back to Talk Talk Live, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, indeed. And we are live here on IG and live here on YouTube. Let me just move this camera around there a little bit. Move my thing around here a little second as we get comfortable. There we go. Thank you very much for joining me here in Talk Talk Live. I asked, yes, as well. You may notice something. I have the Steve T's uniform. If you don't see it, there it is. And, I'm going to angle this camera down there for a second so you can see it. There you go. So, yeah, we're sponsored by Steve C's today. No, 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 no. I decided to wear this uniform simply because, yeah, we're talking about Black Love with my fiance, and so, yes, indeed, Steve's Teas on the mantelpiece here, and yes, she sent me some tea, some cup and sauce in there. So yes, indeed. So we are good to go here on Talk Talk Live. Yes, indeed. Great shirt indeed. Yes, I thought I'd wear it tonight, being we're talking about this subject here. But thank you very much for joining me on Talk Talk Live. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. And yeah, thank you for everyone who joined me on yesterday's show. Still on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We got to be making some change here, and they'll be coming this August actually. So look forward to that. Also, yes, I decided to wear the Steve's Tees t-shirt, Steve's Tees in Brantford. Do look it up. It's on Instagram. It's on LinkedIn. It's on Facebook. One of the best tea rooms, not only in the province of Ontario, but in Canada, period. And it has been documented as such. So go on up to Steve's Teas, get yourself some great teas. They have near 300 varieties. And also, we're one of the proud sponsors uh, the Toronto Revelers, actually. Very, very proud sponsor of Toronto Revelers, who are Band of the Year for the second year running. What's my fave tea? Asked Lana BK. Lana knows my favorite tea is strawberry oolong, watermelon oolong, probably strawberry oolong, watermelon oolong. I call it Sunday morning. Or, let's see, what else? Any of the Roybuses as well. I do love those, and also, yeah, the what's it now? Milima. Yes, indeed, the Milima, the orange pico tea from Kenya, ladies and gentlemen. I do love a Milima. So thank you very much to Steve Tees for the shirt and for yeah sponsoring of tonight's show. I don't know. Well, we'll see. We'll see if it's sponsoring tonight's show. But again, I was given a strict list as to what I can and cannot advertise on, and this is a relatively good topic, so I think we can advertise on this show anyways. I'll get the feedback from Lana in just a bit to see if that is indeed the case. But let's get on with this, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Talk Live, live on IG, YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment on the road to 1,000 subscribers. So let's talk about it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about it. Yes, is black love in the UK dying? Oh, sorry. Let me just pull back to the full camera here. I'm going on something else right here. Yeah, it's a question that I am familiar with. I have many a relative in the United Kingdom, and it is something that is I wouldn't say it's not really discussed, but it is beneath the surface, really, and it is something that is a quandary to many that is out there. It seems that there are as many African diaspora children, like fully African diaspora children, as there are mixed race kids in the United Kingdom, and the question has to be asked if black love is indeed dead in the UK, because again, such trends from the UK usually transport themselves to the United States and to North America, really. But as society is getting more cosmopolitan these days, these questions need to be asked because again, people's interest change, mood changes, and especially when it comes to a certain segment that we will talk to tonight, a certain a certain group of individuals who are making this very much a hot topic, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna get into this with the one and only. Let me just pop my screen off right here on YouTube. There we go. And it is from yeah, is this video right here. Black Love in the UK is officially dead. I wouldn't say it's dead. I wouldn't say it's on life support, but it's in need of surgery. It's in need of medical assistance. Let me say that. And it's coming from Javan Palmer, a UK podcaster out there, and yeah, I definitely and so give some love to Javin Palmer. He's doing his thing out there, doing wonderful things. YouTube streets out there, and yeah, give him his love because he did a very very poignant piece on the subject. And yeah, I thought I'd highlight it here tonight. Now again, as for me, I have not dated anyone of any other race outside of black women myself. I have but I do have a mixed race um, fiance, so they can speak to this subject as well. And yeah, and as I was stating with regards to my UK family, one segment of my UK family on my dad's side was my dearly departed cousin Keith, and his family is they are in a black slash African diaspora relationship, more Caribbean, if anything. But on my mother's side, my uncle Bretno, he's married to a white wife, and they have children as well out there. And he's very very much proud about it. Actually, he once discussed me if I wish to partake in uh, in the practice myself, but I decided not to do so. But again, he gave me the option. He did indeed. But anyways, just wanted to study this video here and see if such trends are moving towards the further west, being North America. It isn't there yet, but it goes into the subject matter here and how one group of the population in the UK have indeed made this a hot topic. And we're going to get into this here on Talk Live. So let's get into it here with Javin Palmer doing wonderful things YouTube streets. Please like and subscribe to him, and let's get into it right now. Fair use, fair use, fair use. Let's get into it.
UK date black women. It is a story we hear both in the UK and in America. It's a podcast topic, it's a group chat topic, it's a TikTok topic. And clips like this kind of prove it.
At the Honey Effect says a lot of straight black men, especially of Caribbean descent, are not dating black women in Britain anymore. They're dating interracially. I think more and more black women are starting to give up on them and date interracially too. This is asking where the black men are. We're getting all sorts in.
I agree. I think a lot of men are dating outside of the race. A lot of my friends are.
Why?
Few reasons.
1, 2, 3 of them.
What's the prime one that you've heard?
A good one is
a good one or one?
The number one.
Yeah.
Is what's the word for it? There's a word for it. I'll use the right word. It's like submission.
Oh, they're submissive.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, like.
Yeah, well, again, we've already mentioned this here on Talk Live that they say that white women are more submissive. They have that submissive character among them, and this can be true. There are a lot of women. Now there are some who do not have this submissive character, but if you really want to know, they do love chocolate, and they do love African diaspora men for certain reasons that we won't go into today, but let them be, due to intercourse, if you really want to know. But for the most part, they say that black women are less, and black and white women are more submissive. Let's continue.
I'll give you an example. Like a lot of my friends go for like Greek, North London, innit? So a lot of Greek girls, a lot of Cypriot girls, a lot of Turkish girls, like so a lot of Mediterranean mix. They're raised to be like wives, like housewives.
Really and truly, I want to answer 3 questions. Number 1, is it actually true that black men in the UK date outside their race more than other men in Britain? Number 2, what's going on with black Caribbean men specifically? Because our numbers are really different. And number 3, which might be a little bit left field, but Dr. Umar Johnson really advocates for marrying within the race because of economic reasons. And I want to explore that in this video. So actually, when we look at the 2021 census data, it actually shows us that 72% of black men in England and Wales are in relationships with black women. So that
is a huge statistic right there, that 70% of in England and Wales, 72% of black men are with black women. So we still date and we still marry predominantly within the race even in England and Wales, which is some of the more progressive dating circles I've ever seen throughout the world. Maybe if you get into Western Europe, you can see that as well. In Canada, you can definitely see it here as well. But yeah, 72%. I thought it would be lower, being that has been a thing for the last, I would say, 40 years, going on into, I would say, no, really entrenched within the last 40 years, I'd say. And number has only been increasing since then. But still, 70% of, and this is according to the UK census. So for that sort of number, it is quite, um, yeah, it's quite good that it's still of that number, because I thought it'd be way less than that, because more often than not, you do see a lot of black men, especially because usually it's a case of black men dating white women that are with white men, and I thought that those numbers would be way lower. Let's continue.
Whole black men don't date black women thing, statistically in Britain, it's not quite true. But when you actually zoom in a little bit further, you start to see why the old trope of black men don't date black women, where it really comes from, right? And look, I'm purely going to speak from a UK perspective. I made this same video about a year ago and I threw in a lot of American statistics, but I'm going to keep this one UK centric. So 53% of black Caribbean men specifically are with someone who is not black, and nearly 1 in 3 are with a white British woman. The ONS.
So run that back. This is a really stark statistic right here. Black Caribbean men with a non-Caribbean partner. That means non-black partner, or I would say, Indian or South Asian descendant partner. It was 43% in 2011. From 2004 to 8, it was 48%, but now it's up to 53%. And this is Caribbean men. So the majority, and this is the segment of the population I was talking about. It's Caribbean men who are indeed interracial daters in the UK. They're the ones who usually are seen with white women. As you can see, 53% of them are not dating black women at all. Now that includes or with a non-Caribbean partner. That includes my uncle. That includes a descendant, my cousin, who's out there as well. He's married to a non-Caribbean woman himself. He has a non-Caribbean partner with non-Caribbean kids, but they're descendants as well. Great family, great wedding as well. Shout out to my cousin out there. But yeah, this number is indeed rising, and it is not abating. And so that's usually the trope within this group, is that Caribbean men usually are the ones who date outside of their race. Again, from 2004 to 2008, and this number has been steadily increasing over the last, as you can see, the last 20 years, going on 40 years, into from the early 80s, where my uncle married my aunt, literally. I call her, you can call her play aunt, but really it's really, I call her my aunt because she's such a nice lady. But again, it is something that is a rising trend, and that's what's known in the UK, that Caribbean men usually date like 1 out of 2, or more than 1 out of 2, 1.2 or 3 out of 2 are dating non-Caribbean partners, usually white women. Well, it is a thing out there. It really is a thing. Let's continue.
Men specifically are with someone who is not black, and nearly 1 in 3 are with a white British woman. The ONS released data in the 2021 census regarding couples by ethnicity in 2024, but it wasn't published in a percentage format, so I had to do some digging myself and work it out. I've actually left the link in the description. Alongside that, if you wish to support the channel, you could buy me a coffee to allow me to continue to do the research and make videos like this. Before I dump the numbers on you, I need to explain how this data actually came together, because if I don't, some of you are just going to drop a comment saying, oh, the stats can say anything, and log off. Most of my information will come from the 2021 census, which was in England and Wales. So this won't include Scotland or Northern Ireland. They run a separate census. So it also only counts opposite sex couples. So same-sex partnerships are a whole different table. That's another video. It includes people who are married in a civil partnership and people who are cohabiting. Alongside that as well, the ONS uses 18 ethnic groups. But for this video, I'm going to use what I call any black partner, which basically lumps Africans, Caribbeans, and other black together, because those are the categories they give us. And because when you lot ask, do black men date black women, you're not asking whether a Nigerian man is with a Ghanaian woman, but I will explain the differences in the way we date as Caribbean and African men as we go through. But any black partner will basically mean any black partner, full stop. All the info will be linked below again. So let's tackle the biggest lie, that black men don't date black women. Well, no. In 2021, of every black man in England and Wales in a relationship, so that's African, Caribbean, and other black, 72% of them were with a black woman. That is nearly 3/4. Only
which is, again, a very good number, to be fair. I think in the United States it's about 79% now, with exclusively who are with black partners. But that was down from 83% out of the last census, which I think is 2016 in the United States. And I think there's similar numbers here in Canada. So again, this is a an issue that that is only steadily decreasing those numbers. So 72%, I was surprised at 72%. I thought it would be more, but it's clear that African men have helped this statistic. Caribbean men have not, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you see it. But I think the trend is also starting to show in the United States. The United States, I mean, black men used to be dating black women at an 83%, or were in black relationship with an 83% clip. Not so long ago within the previous census, but in the 2000, I think the latest 2024 census, it's gone down to 79%, and it's only decreasing. So black men are finding other races in which to date and to marry, with well, remarkable numbers, to be fair. Let's continue.
28% were with someone who isn't black. So when Dr. Umar or one of these podcast bros gets up there and says black men are wholesale abandoning black women, the actual numbers tells you they're wrong, or at least they're wrong at the top line. Most black British men in couples are with black British women. That is just a fact of it. But the reality is that there is a particular black man from a certain ethnic group that is holding these numbers up. And yes, most of you are smart enough to know, so I won't play dumb. Black African men in the UK are more likely to be with a black woman compared to black Caribbean men. We know.
Yeah, I mean, black African men are very much race loyal. I think it's part of the fabric of the those from Africa. They usually are very much hard pressed to marry their own. But again, those women tend to be a bit more submissive. They tend to be a bit more. Sorry, my goodness, where did that come from? That's right. I tell you what, they tend to be a bit more submissive. They tend to be a bit more cooperative with their men, especially. They tend to be more patriarchal societies within within African families. So therefore, father, mother, and children all aligned into one, and you don't usually see you don't usually see you don't usually see a huge divergence of that outside of maybe modern African women, but even then, they tend to be very submissive. They tend to be very cooperative. Where in the Caribbean diaspora, you get the opposite of that. They tend to be less submissive. They tend, as the man earlier on said, they tend to be less cooperative, and so other men are starting to find other spaces. Uh, not to be insulting, other spaces, other groups, other ethnicities, other races in which to date, and Caribbean men tend to pair into those pair into those relationships quite seamlessly. Let's continue.
This already, but the question we need to explore is why, and also how this affects our community. I'll be honest, As a Black Caribbean man, I don't think I really noticed it until I got a bit older. I personally spent the first half of my adulthood in another country, but what I did notice is many Black British-born men from Caribbean families do date outside their race. Some will call it self-hate, but actually the way that I see it is this. The same indoctrination that causes Black women to hate wearing their own natural hair is the same indoctrination and socialization that makes Black men think that non-Black is better. The idea that light is right. The Eurocentric ideas of beauty have affected men just as much as they affect women, in my opinion. And I can't tell you the countless stories and arguments I've had with Black men who claim to not date Black women, even though their sisters are Black, their mums are Black, their friends are Black. But I digress. I will get into the personal stories a little bit later. Here's where the picture stops.
And not only that, you gotta really count it and take into account that and it's the unfortunate truth that a lot of these women are again you have these Eurocentric uh, ideals about light being right and being fair skinned and being fair skinned that's a problematic phrase right there in and of itself. But you have these individuals who believe these Caribbean men who believe that it is easier to get along with a whiter with a lighter shade, and they've been groomed, especially through media, through fashion, to gravitate towards white women being the epitome of beauty, which I do not believe in the slightest. However, a lot of Caribbean men do, but not only that, it's these women tend to be fit, feminine, friendly, cooperative, submissive. They have all five. They have all five keys to a high value woman. So, of course, there is that trope of being a Caribbean man loving bigger girls, which is stunning. Uh, that you would get into relationships with a woman who you thought when you have these Eurocentric ideals that you get on with a woman who's tend to be obese, unfortunately, but the trope is there. But yeah, it, it it's so problematic that these men gravitate to these women because they tend to be fit, feminine, friendly, cooperative, submissive. But not only that, that they tend to be a little more promiscuous. To be fair, they tend to be a little more liberal in terms of their intercourse ideals, and Caribbean men tend to like that. But not so much Africans. African are very, very much, race loyal. But Caribbean men tend to be free agents, unfortunately, especially in the UK. Let's continue.
What's being convenient. If you break Black men down by African versus Caribbean, which the census does do, the numbers are completely different. Black African brothers, 83% are with a Black woman. Only about 1 in 6 aren't. Africans statistically are absolutely holding it down. Let's just be real. Black Caribbean men though, 52%, just over half. That means that nearly 1 in 2 Caribbean men in England and Wales who are in a relationship are with a woman who is not Black. And nearly 1...
Yeah, and it's a big problem. I've seen it myself. My uncle's involved in such a relationship. My cousin's involved in such a relationship. My 2 cousins are involved in such a relationship. The only one who isn't, to be fair, but she moved away, is my female cousin who married Black herself. To be fair, they tend to be a little more race loyal. Got to give it to Black women here. Let's continue.
In 3, 31% are with a white British woman specifically. The single biggest outside pairing, if you want to call it that. Now look, I'm a Caribbean man. And when I saw that number, I can't lie, I was a little bit surprised. We have all grown up with the jokes of Jamaican men love fat white women or something of that nature. And I recently came across an old TikTok from this guy right here.
Somebody please tell Dr. Umar Johnson that Black men in the UK are not going to be listening to his advice or his way of life when he's telling them to stay away from white women and to stick to Black women. That is not going to happen. Black men in the UK are heavily dependent on the economic security that white women provide. Black men in the UK get into relationships with women. I'm talking about adult men, not teenagers who still live at their mum's house and don't have life pressures on them. I'm talking about adult Black men in the UK get into relationships with women to find a place to live for free and to find a place where they haven't got to pay bills. That's why Black men in the UK are in relationships with white women on mass amounts, on mass levels.
And that is troubling. That is extremely troubling that this man's coming to you and saying that, listen, they're there to get a free place to stay, room and board, bills paid, and and be literal gigolos, literal um, how should I say, kept men instead of kept women, which is, yeah, it's a troubling thing that these men are looking for, a free meal and free room and board. I mean, that Caribbean men are, some Caribbean men are looking for sugar mommies, and yeah, it's stunning to see that this is indeed the case. But yeah, a lot. It's definitely the Caribbean men's burden that they don't have a sense of independence among themselves to be on their own 2 feet and not work and not live for themselves and for their families and be leaders of their families, and rather just continue to cower behind the apron strings of their white women in order to live, which is, it's stunning. But you have a man who's admitting to that right here. Let's continue.
Because white women will lie and do benefits fraud to basically allow her man to live with her for very long periods of time, 10, 15, 20 years, where he doesn't have to pay any bills and he doesn't have any big financial commitments. Black women are not having it. I'm telling you, as somebody that's been with black gal after black gal after black, bro, I've been in relationships. My relationships have all been with black women. They're not allowed. They cannot respect a man. They cannot respect a black man. They cannot consistently have sex with a black man. They cannot love a black man. They cannot talk to a black man nicely. If he's had to move into her life and she's had to provide security for him, it will run out very quickly. He won't get longer than 12 months in that kind of situation. So when Dr. Umar Johnson is saying to black men, you need to stick with black women, he needs to go beneath the layer and start talking about black men's mentality and black men's attitude towards economics and towards family economics, basically.
Before, yeah, and that is a harsh thing to hear, but in certain respects, it is true. Um, the fact that certain black men would participate in benefits fraud in order to stay with white women and have kids with them and not take care of them, and that's something that we need to eliminate from the black diaspora, let alone black men. Period, because Caribbean men are, in certain respects, are seen as hardworking in certain respects, but in other respects, they're seen as lazy and taking advantage of the system, and that needs to change definitely. But and it's true what he also says about black women having a time clock. Absolutely true, and I think this goes throughout. And I repeat, throughout the African diaspora, that black women do not tolerate laziness from their black men. They are on a timer. If you are not one who is producing, protecting, and providing for a family within a certain period of time, black women will drop you. They'll lose you. White women are way more forgiving, and I do mean way more forgiving of black men than black women are. As he says, 6 months to a year. If more than that, then black women will see you, will start looking at you sideways and want to be rid of you, actually. And I mean, shout out to black women for that, to have black men stand on their own 2 feet. But it's the truth. White women are way more forgiving of black men than black women are, and it is, and it's showing the statistics that a lot of these men, the Caribbean men, seeing that women, that seeing these white women as an easy touch, are starting to move towards them in greater numbers, especially in the UK. Let's continue.
Man, them get money, they buy loads of trainers, they buy loads of designer clothes, they go on holidays, they go to restaurants, they rent cars, they finance cars, they cheat on their girls by booking hotels and all of that. They spend their money like that, but they ain't spending no money on owning, possessing and maintaining a house in the UK. And because they're not doing that, they need white women. Do you understand what I mean?
And I mean, the question I have to ask is he wrong? A lot of black men see the financial benefits of being with a woman outside their race and how it benefits them. The black men not dating black women thing is more specific to Caribbean black men in the UK. And I'm sure some of my brothers are going to be in the comments saying, it's love. You can't decide who you love. It's just a preference. But the issue with that argument is Not necessarily that it's not true, because yes, men have innate signals and, there's things that we see in women, but none of it is coded in race. It is socialized. It is an indoctrination process from young. It is the movies you consume. It's the TV that you watch, the social media you scroll on, and also your peers. And I'll give you a prime example of myself, basically. I played football for 10 years. I was at Crystal Palace Football Club. And if you know about sports in general, the changing room can be a place where many strong characters can collide. The truth is, many men in these change rooms also want to fit in. They want to be accepted. And one way of being accepted is to ensure that your other half looks a certain way or fits a certain aesthetic, if you know what I mean. And think of it like this, like when us guys go for meals or double dates and whatnot, sometimes men are not picking women for themselves, but also picking for how other men will perceive the lady they have on their arm. I know that sounds a little bit funny, but it's true. Like men sometimes are picking women for other men, if you get what I'm saying. So the next question I feel that's worth tackling here is, do black men date outside their race more than other men in Britain? Now, let me break down the data.
Okay, before it gets into that, I want to draw a parallel of that sort of ideal to that of what's going on, because he was talking about he being a former footballer, former soccer player for the American. Oh, I hate soccer. I hate the word soccer. It's just I'm gonna just keep saying footballer for those who have this whole soccer idea. This is what I'm talking about. So he's drawing a parallel from footballers in the UK, and a lot of them still do date black women, but a lot of them have an image to uphold and protect, and so they think their image is better served by having a white woman in their arm than a black woman on their arm, which is stunning to me. That's why I love guys like Bukayo Saka, of course. Our supporter myself, as you can see in the background right here. Bing. Uh, you know, um, Bukayo Saka. He is yes, he is engaged to a black woman, and a beautiful black woman in and of itself. So I hope that is slowly changing, but especially during the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and noughties as well. There was a growing trend in locker rooms, especially when you get into continental Europe, but definitely in the UK, that if you are a black footballer of a certain standard, then you need to have a white woman on your arm, which is very, very similar to that of the to that of black men who leave with snow bunnies, aka white women, after the NFL draft. Very similar to that. You're starting to see a lot more of that these days. That when these guys are getting, on draft night, on NFL draft night, a lot of these football players have white women right beside them as they're sitting on their couch or sitting in the green room area before they walk out on stage, and it's becoming way more common these days. So but in that sense, you have a lot of these black women, a lot of these white women buying into these men, including. You see it in basketball too, in basketball circles, especially for the NBA, including the two-time MVP Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. His woman is white, but again, he lived in circles in Hamilton where it was very easy to start dating white women at a very early age because it was accepted then. So there are parallels between sportsmen and white women, especially black sportsmen and white women. It's uh it's very, very much a known thing that if you are of a certain stature, of a certain class of athlete, especially an elite athlete, you tend to have a white woman on your arm. You can tend to have a white woman on arm. I would say it's starting. I think it's starting to balance out now between these athletes having black female partners and white female partners, starting to balance out. I think it's like, I think it's 1 for 1 these days, and and it's the same thing for footballers in the UK. And I think it's all about the aesthetic and how it looks. It looks like you have made it when you have a white woman in the arm, when it shouldn't be the case. It should never be that case. I think black women are beautiful, and I think the most beautiful women in the world, and so that's how I've always dated as such. And I would hope these feelings would change. But one thing that white women do, and I'm sure it's the same in the UK, is that a lot of these white women buy into these guys early when they are on the rise rather than at the finish line, and that's a thing that a lot of black women need to change up. They need to start growing with these athletes very early. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but You can see, especially collegiate athletes, especially those especially basketball and especially football athletes in the U.S. and in Canada as well. They usually have white women around them, helping them their homework, helping them with meals, helping them to get their day to day done. And you don't see a lot of black. Well, it balances out in terms of black women and white women, but it is a thing. It is a really really big thing. But a lot of black women unfortunately wait until they get to the finish line to start getting after these guys. When a lot of white women buy in early, and that has to change. Black women, that has to change. But there are parallels. There are similarities between those footballs in the UK and football players in the US and in Canada and basketball players as well. Let's continue.
Bangladeshi men. So about 93% of them are with Bangladeshi women. Pakistani men, about 90%. Indian men, 88%. Chinese men, 84%. Black African men, 79%. And white British men, around 93%. I know you might be thinking I just said 83% earlier for black African men, but this is specifically black African men dating black African women. My previous data was regarding black African men dating black African women and or Caribbean women. So that's why. So from the numbers here, we can see white men don't date outside their race at all, or they don't like to anyway. And across every one of these groups, at least 8 in 10 men are in a relationship with women from the same background. Then you get to black Caribbean men, and we are sitting at less than half. Again, this is someone within your own ethnic group. So that means the category within the ONS. So it doesn't account for Caribbean men who might date black African women, if you remember what I said earlier. So let's get back to the why of this conversation, because it's not...
So as you can see, the one thing, let's get back to that chart there right quick, because that was really poignant, especially in the UK. Here we go. Yeah, I mean, look at white British men. They strictly date white. I thought that would be way a little bit different, but they are strictly race loyal. And that is stunning to me to see that. Well, being that there's a lot of interracial dating going on in the UK, and a lot of white British men do date black women. A lot of them do. But it's stunning to see that you start to see that in society, but still they're very much race loyal, very 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 much race loyal, and it's very much a story as in the United States where there's this whole swirling culture. However, to be fair, only 0.5% of white men uh, deal or marry black women. They're the least. It's the least possible couple between of swirlers of interracial daters, and it goes to show it is the same right here. White British men are very race loyal. Bangladeshi men, true, very race loyal. Pakistani, Indian, again, very race loyal. Chinese men, again, very race loyal. Although their women are not. Chinese men are very race loyal as well. African men, same thing, but Caribbean men, look at that. That is a stunning statistic. Let me bring that closer to you here. There we go. Oh, sorry. I thought it was there. There we go. 46%. And this is why I brought this subject up. If indeed black love is dying in the UK, if it's dead in the UK, and if there's anyone who killed black love is Caribbean men. 46%. 46%, including my uncle, including some of my family as well, who are descendants of Caribbean men. They're doing it. They're doing it. They're making the switch. They're making the change. Usually, if you're dealing with a Caribbean man, chances are he's dealing with a white woman, especially in the UK. And it is a sad statistic, but if you've ever been to the UK, you know it. You know if a black man, and it goes to show, if you're a black man dealing with a black woman, chances are you're African. If you're a black man dealing with a white woman, chances are you're Caribbean. And this is why I say black. If indeed, if black love is dead in the UK, it's because of people like myself. I'm Caribbean. I'm Caribbean descent. I could have easily been raised in England if my mother and father didn't move on from there to Canada. I could have easily done it. But I love black women too much. Again, I lived there for 7 years. Had certain relations with white women. Yes, I did. However, Yeah, and my uncle tried to impress upon me this idea, but I didn't take the bait. But a lot of Caribbean men do, and it's just in the water. But I'll let uh, sorry, let me get his name because I don't want to miss it. Javin, there you go. I will let Javin explain why indeed this is the case.
Ethnic group. So that means the category within the ONS. So it doesn't account for Caribbean men who might date Black African women, if you remember what I said earlier. So let's get back to the why of this conversation, because it's not just one single thing. If we look at the South Asian groups, right, they have religion doing a lot of heavy lifting for them. Islam, Hinduism, Sikhism, marrying within faith is a very strong tradition for them, which usually means to marry within the same ethnicity. And family involvement in who you end up with is still very real in those communities. The aunties have a say, the parents have a say, the uncles have a say. Everyone in the family has opinions and suggestions, and you are influenced to make a decision based on that. Chinese men have a very similar story. They have a smaller diaspora, there's a language barrier, a strong cultural pool to preserve the heritage. And Africans, even though still relatively fresh here in mass numbers, most large-scale African migration to the UK is post-1990s. So the ties back to home are still relatively fresh and hot. The language is spoken at home, the food, the church, the mosque, wherever it may be, all of it keeps you inside your insulated community. And then you have us Caribbean men. We've been there since the 1940s. We don't have a religion that separates us from white Britain. Most of us are Christian, right? That's the religion they gave us. That's another argument, another video. But it's the same as your average British white family. We don't have a language barrier. We speak English. Obviously, we speak patois, but English. And we don't have arranged marriages. Yes, we got loads of aunties and uncles, but they're not vetting our dating preferences. They're not making decisions on who we date. So all the cultural barriers, I guess, that keep us from other groups are actually a bit lower for us. They're weaker for us. And when the barriers are weak, we can just walk through them, which is what we're seeing. And again, this is not an excuse for Black men. This is more just kind of exploring what's the actual mechanism here. Like, why is it this way? Okay, because that's what we need to explore here. So when I last touched on...
Okay, so he's absolutely right. There are not as many barriers. There are not as many roadblocks in with regards to other races like Bangladeshi, like Indian, like Muslim, like Chinese as well. There aren't these sort of barriers of religion, and not only that, there aren't the culture's not as tight knit as in other as in even white British culture is very much a traditional. You know, it's going back for 1,000 years. For thousands of years, it's very much tight culturally. So there's not much breakage of that. However, that and as well as of African men. So as he says, most of the immigration from Africa to the UK happened during the 90s, where if you were black in the UK, you're more often than not you're from the Caribbean because of the Windrush, and again, your religion's the same, your your food is the same. There isn't much familial standards in terms of keeping your family and keeping your culture as African diaspora or as Caribbean as possible. So yeah, there are no barriers. There are literally no barriers, so people can walk right through and go on and do what they must, do what they please, because there's nothing to stop you. There's literally nothing to stop you. You can, because you're of the same religion, you go to the same schools, you eat the same food, you're into the same culture, because urban culture is it out there, very much so. If you think it's big in the U.S., look at it in the U.K. It is huge. Urban culture is big time, especially especially if you are dealing with soca, but definitely reggae. Reggae has a huge hold on things in the UK. It's one of the prime reasons why ska, why why ska was such a big thing out there. Why reggae and UB40, that's another huge band out there. Why soul is huge in the UK. All these different and all these different art forms of Caribbean slash African slash American descent are huge in the UK, and for that, a lot of white women tend to see black men as being, as being, the, we don't say Tyrones for nothing. They'll usually be called Nigels out there, but again, these, and especially in their pervasiveness in sport as well in the UK, which is another huge thing as well. And it's all these different, with this monolith of, well, I would say monolith, with these, tropes of black men in music and culture and entertainment and these sort of things. All these and the breakdown of all barriers in terms of religion, in terms of culture, in terms of family. You're going to see this pervasiveness. Now, again, not so much with Africans, but definitely, I repeat, definitely with Caribbeans. Caribbeans live the same lives of their white counterparts. So therefore, it's and with different cultural loves of that white women definitely tend to agree with. Guess what? Especially the music, especially the food, especially the culture, especially the sport, and all this other stuff. It's so much easier for white women to fall in love with Caribbean men because they share so many things. So, and there aren't as many barriers. So therefore, you're gonna get this number of 46% of black men are in black only relationships. 53% are in interracial dating, in interracial relationships, interracial marriages, to be fair. Let's continue.
From this topic, someone left a comment and they said, I was just talking about couples in general. What about marriage? The 2021 census doesn't split into ethnic by marriage versus cohabiting, but the 2011 one did. And it did show cohabiting couples were about 12% into ethnic and married couples were about 8%. So marriage across the whole population is more racially loyal than just living together. Long-term commitment, families, they weigh in more. So I guess it makes more sense. There is a slightly bigger marriage story in the Caribbean community. And there's a research group called Civitas, right? And they analyzed the 2021 census and they found that only 27% of black Caribbean adults are married at all. That is the lowest. I want to say that again. That is the lowest of any ethnic group in Britain.
That is stunning. How black Caribbean families are the least married. But then again, it's the same statistic. If you go to the United States, it's the same statistic. Especially with African American women who are the least married of all women. Here, Black Caribbean people are the least married. 27% are least married, which is again certainly stunning. I don't think there's so much a call to marriage within the Caribbean culture as there is within let's say British culture. A lot of interracial interracial relationships usually lead towards marriage within, especially when you're dealing with white British women and black Caribbean men. White British women definitely insist upon marriage and children and doing it the more traditional way, where Caribbean men are usually take it or leave it, and that's why you have this low percentage of black Caribbean people who are married, which is stunning, let alone married to each other. So because they're it's very much a disengagement of that commitment of marriage, which I hope will change, because that is usually the best way towards generational wealth. But especially when you see Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, why their cultures are starting to dominate in certain segments of British life. White British are starting to ebb and flow between those areas, but still there is a high amount of U.S. White American families who are married. They tend to take the vow that much more seriously, but it's sad to see the black Caribbean people are that low on the totem pole in terms of marriage. Let's continue.
British is around 44%. Bangladeshi, Pakistani, Indian are just over 60%. So while they are over 60%, we're on 27%. I want to make that clear. So before you even ask who are Caribbean people marrying, you kind of have to ask the question, are Caribbean people marrying at all? And the answer for the majority is no, which means that when we kind of obsess over the interracial marriage statistics and we're arguing over the small slice of Caribbean people who actually get married in the first place, we're actually kind of ignoring a bigger question, which is that our community, more than any other in Britain, doesn't really do marriage.
Well, one thing I'll say for my, and I'm using my family as a reference here because I have family who are of marrying age now. They are all, two of my cousins are married. One married to a white woman, another married to a black British male. There you go. So again, shout out to family for help raising those numbers, be trying to raise those statistics. I'm looking for my third cousin. Not mentioned him here. Hopefully he'll get into the mood as well. But again, we are the marrying kind, and I think that has something to do with my uncle taking that step, even if it was within a interracial auspices. Let's continue.
And this is where I'm going to get on my little soapbox for a minute, yeah? Because I don't think we talk enough about what marriage actually does for a community. We love the fancy wedding. You know, we love he's got to buy my ring. He's got to propose within 2 years. You know, we love stunting on all our friends and inviting 100 people and everyone spending mad money that could buy you a house and looking fancy and getting the pictures and the videos. But we need to look at the mechanism and institution of marriage itself, because it is inherently political. Whether you like the sound of it or not, marriage is essentially a wealth building tool. It's two incomes under one roof. It's shared assets. It's a house you can actually afford because you're not the only one doing it. It's a pension that has two people paying into it. It's inheritance that stays in the family instead of me having to split it 6 ways. Every other community in Britain that's building wealth right now is doing it through marriage.
As I already stated here on Talk the Top Live, yes, the best way for generational wealth is through marriage. Go figure. I've said it time and time and time again. And how Caribbean men, how African American men, FBA men and women have shunned this U.S. African American, African American people in general, how they shun marriage is stunning when they used to be of the highest married groups in the African Diaspora or in the Western world, especially during the 1960s when we definitely needed each other then. We could not afford to not be married then. But now those numbers have dwindled, and that statistic is very, very much. I mean, comment down below or comment here what your feelings on marriage are and what your feelings on black. The fall the fall of black love, especially through black Caribbean men. Do comment here. I want to hear your views as well. But yeah, the first thing we have to. If you want generational wealth, if you want greater things for your kids and your kids' kids and your kids' kids, the first thing you need to do is get married and pool resources. That's what it was all about. That's what marriage is all about. Pooling resources, and creating a family of good humans. Generational wealth and creating a family of good humans. That's what marriage is all about, people. But people are shunning that, and it has led to a lot of the degradation of society. We need to get back to marriage. Quite simple, to the point. Things are way too lax, and it's showing up in the UK. It's showing up in the rest of the Western world, and a lot of these places are lapping us simply because they insist upon marriage and generational wealth and building better families. Let's continue.
Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, again, over 60% are married. And yes, of course, there are cultural ties, but it is strategic as well. I hate to say it, but I don't think marriage is about love, and that's my personal opinion. That's a modern framing. Our ancestors married to bring land together. In medieval times, it was to join houses and families. This idea of love and the extravagant party and, all that stuff, that's all modern. And then if we even think politically, statistically, married households, they're more likely to own property, and property owners, they get listened to. They're also more stable. The kids stay in the same school, the same postcode, the same community, and that builds the kind of neighborhood presence that actually shifts things. We all want black politicians, black business owners, black landlords, black wealth, and we want it to be passed down. But a lot of that starts with two black people committing to each other on paper. Now we start to get into the Dr. Umar territory. But
all right, and this is good reason to talk about my parents. Two black, one from Grenada, one from Guyana, who decided to get married and have kids, and from that generational wealth ensued. It literally ensued, and how people can neglect this because of their own selfish needs is ridiculous. Because as he was saying, it was not about love. It was not about the tingly feelings inside. It was about building a better world, building wealth within, building resources, and building better families, building better children. Simple as that. You could the amount of 80%. Let's use a U.S. statistic. 80% of inmates within the U.S. Prison system come from single parent homes. 80%. Go look it up. Is it me or especially single mother homes? Okay, where emotional, violent men of all races are built. I cannot stress that enough. I cannot stress that enough. You need to, if you are a young person these days, especially if you want to get through these greater, well, these harder times and these tougher economies, you need to be married. You need to be in a relationship. It goes without saying. It goes without saying. You cannot get through life by doing alone unless you have an inheritance, a trust fund of some kind, or a business that has seemingly wowed the universe, and those are for the very very chosen few. Generational wealth is key, and that comes through marriage, plain and simple, to the point, and better families, better communities overall. Let's continue.
I'm going to get there, so just bear with me. Let me keep cooking first. Now, there isn't any clear study on this, right? There is no clear study on the economic impact of marriage on the Black British community, because if there was, I would have found it by now. But you don't need to study to see this. All you have to do is look at every other community in Britain and clock what they're doing and what we're not doing. And I'm not saying every relationship has to end in marriage. I'm not saying single mums aren't out here doing incredible work, because they are. My own family is an example of that. But if we're being honest, doing it alone is harder. It's harder financially. From a logistical standpoint, it's harder. It's harder on the kids, and the community pays a price for that too, even if we don't want to admit it. Okay, Dr. Umar time, Dr. Umar. So Dr. Umar's framing is that a black man who dates a white woman is essentially waving a surrender flag to white supremacy. He literally uses the phrase buck broken. I shouldn't laugh, but it's kind of funny. He calls white women snow bunnies, as we know, and the brothers who date them, they get called bunny hoppers. We've seen it all before. Now, that's an American framing from a specifically African-American racial history, and there are a lot of parallels to what is happening here. It's different, but it exists. Britain doesn't have the same racial kind of history and mythology as America does. We never had Jim Crow in the way they did. We don't quite have that same violent, hyper-visible history of black, white, sexual policing. What we do have is a colonial legacy. We have Windrush. We have a messier, more mixed reality on the ground. The white and black Caribbean category in the census is now the biggest mixed category in Britain. Over 500,000 people. That's a lot of British families that Dr. Umar's framework has nowhere to put. Although, to be fair to him, in his framing, he labels biracial or mixed race as black if that is what they identify with. What I personally find more fascinating with Dr.
And that is a number that is stunning. I want to repeat that number. Let me get back to it. That is, wow. What he just said there, take it in.
Messier, more mixed reality on the ground. The white and black Caribbean category in the census is now the biggest mixed category in Britain. Over 500,000 people. That's a lot of British families.
500,000 people in a country of about 19 million are of mixed race heritage. When I say that of the children that are coming up, half of them tend to be of mixed race, and half of them mixed race being black and white, and half of them tend to be of African diaspora descent, African/Caribbean. I am not lying. This is a trend that has been going on, especially unabated and gathering speed for the last 20 years, especially in the UK. Especially in the UK. Anybody who's traveled there, you're more than likely to see a black child. You're more than likely to see an interracial child over a black child. That's how it is right now. Absolutely. Not to say it's a bad thing, because when you see an interracial baby, people will see them as black. But again, media and life treats them differently because of their near whiteness. So again, we're gonna be back on IG in just a bit. Stay tuned on IG. We're continuing here on YouTube. But this is when you see 500,000 people of interracial descent, and that's not dropping. It's only going to increase. And you'll see why in a minute. You'll see why in just a bit. But is all that due to African Caribbean men? Yeah. We've been here since the Windrush, during the 40s and 50s, when my grandmother came to the UK. We've been here since the Windrush when my dad was in the UK. It started there and is gone, but it really, really started picking up during the 1980s. Really started picking up then, because that's when interracial dating and marriages started ascending. And then the 90s, it really picked up steam then. That's when it really got up and went. And then 2000s, 2010s, and onwards and upwards, to a point where now, oh shoot, let me just get this here quickly. Where now you're starting to see the numbers of 46% of couples tend to be of African Caribbean partnerships, and interracial partnerships are now 53%. Yeah, it's a serious issue. It's a serious thing, and I mean, listen, love is love, and do what you want to do. But these are numbers that are only going up, and look for it happening in the U.S. It's starting to happen there, and especially Canada. Canada's, oh yeah, definitely very, very multicultural, and that is really taking off here. But especially in the U.S., where there are racial divides, but that is starting to break down, as stated in the previous census around 2018-19. It was at 83%, and then it went down to 79% as of the last census in 2024. I kid you not, and that number is going to keep dropping to match up with these here in the UK. It's happening. Let's continue.
Families that Dr. Umar's framework has nowhere to put. Although, to be fair to him, in his framing, he labels biracial or mixed race as black if that is what they identify with. What I personally find more fascinating with Dr. Umar's approach is that he specifically laments black men who have resources but choose to date outside their race. Ultimately, his resources are now being passed onto another community who are already likely ahead of us if we are talking socio-economically. Let's remove our emotions and feelings from this for a second and look at marriage as a political institution, because it is a political act. When you marry and you die, your wealth, your estate, it will go to your wife. And if she's not of the same ethnicity of you, then technically, yes, your wealth is going outside of your own community. Now, I know there are a bunch of you, man, on here that could care less about the community. And that's fair enough. Each to their own. I'm not here to judge you for what you do, but I mean, integrity. All I'm going to say is this. One thing that the black community suffer with a lot is this hyper individualism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the reasons why. Now, I want to be fair, because it's very easy to make this whole video about what black men are doing and never ask what black women do, right? So let me flip the data a little bit on you.
But yeah, but he before he gets into to the flip data, he's absolutely right. Um, Listen, we're the cause of this whole demise. If black love is dead, or dying, or on life support, or in intensive care, there's a reason why it's there. It's because of black Caribbean men. There's your cause. Black Caribbean men literally are wild children, and they don't give an absolute fuck who they date or what marriage they are carried on into. 27% of black of Caribbean people are married, and of that, a good percentage, I would say half of them, are married to white women. Go figure. Really, really, really go figure, because there's an insistence on marriage of white women with black men. They insist on marriage. and not so much of a Caribbean community in and of itself, but that needs to change if there's going to be generational wealth. But we can go on and on about this. I've already explained it. Let's continue.
African women, 88% are with a black man. That's even higher than African men. Black Caribbean women, according to the data, about 68% are with a black man. That's obviously higher than the Caribbean men again. So yes, black women in the UK are more likely to be with a black partner than black men are. And that's a real gender gap, about 16 percentage points for Caribbeans and about 5 for Africans. But before anyone uses this to beat black men
Shout
over
out
the head in
Chanel.
the comments, please look at this from another ethnicity. And I had to double check this, and I had to go to 2 different sources. But Chinese men in the UK, right, 16% are with a non-Chinese woman. But Chinese women, right, around 40% are dating a non-Chinese male.
Yeah, that is the biggest interracial daters on earth are Asian women. Shout out to Chanel. They're the biggest interracial daters on earth. You want to see no loyalty? Look to Asian women. Asian women will date anybody. They'll date anybody, anything. Yeah, we have problems with Caribbean men here, but Asian women, they take the cake, and especially when it comes to white men. Oh yeah, they'll marry them in a second. That in the United States, the biggest interracial couple known are white men and Asian women. Be they Chinese, be they Japanese, be they Filipino, be they Vietnamese, be they Laos, anywhere. Yeah, yeah. That is those are the real those are that's the big leagues of interracial dating is white men and Asian women. Absolutely, that's the number one. But that's not really heralded. What's really heralded is black men and white women, without question. It is the most taboo subject out there. But these Asian girls are playing in the background and playing under your nose, and you don't even know it. But you look to us because there's there are more eyeballs on well, there are so many racial issues with regards to that, and I don't even want to go down that road. But let's continue.
It's a 24% difference. And it's actually the other way. So the idea of men dating outside their race more than women is obviously not universal. In some communities, actually the women. In the Indian community, it's basically identical, 12% both ways. So when we make this a moral referendum on black men specifically, we're ignoring that this happens across every diaspora,
Yep, it does.
but just in different directions. So why are Caribbean men so much higher than African men? It's not like some genetic difference. It's not that we love ourselves less. The single biggest driver is time, in my opinion. Caribbean migration to Britain peaked between 1948 and 1971. You heard about the Windrush probably a million times. So a Caribbean man born in Britain today has grandparents, probably great-grandparents who came here, multi-generational, majority UK born. African migration is much more recent from a large-scale perspective. The most large-scale African migration to the UK has happened since the 1990s, which means the average black African adult in the UK today is more likely to be first or second generation. And there was some research out of Essex University that came out just almost 20 years ago, right? I'll put in the description. And they basically found that UK-born African men out-partnered, so dated outside their race, at 40% versus 22% for African men overall. So when you strip out the first generation, the UK-born Africans are already halfway to the Caribbean numbers. So I ain't making no judgments here, but give it another 20, 30 years, another generation, and black African men in Britain will probably look statistically identical to black Caribbean now.
Yep, and that is an absolute truth. Well said. Yeah, African men are starting to date outside of their race themselves, especially the second generation and third generation African men. Because this is second generation really, because they're recent. They're more recently introduced to the UK population as of the 1990s. So their second generation is there. So you're starting to see a lot more. Not so much as millennials, but definitely zennials and definitely Gen Alphas will start dating white women in droves. Well, I wouldn't say droves, in greater numbers, as you can see back here in the number chart. Where is it? Let's get there. Bang. African men were 22%, but now UK-born African men, second generation, 39%. Third generation will start hitting 40, 50%. So it's only a matter of time. Black African men, they've been doing their thing, but they're starting to contribute to this black love in the UK being dying uh, within the next I would say next 50 as he said 15 to 20 years. That number is starting to rise now. All African men 22%, UK born African men 39% is only getting because again, the barriers are starting to drop. Their familial constraints are going to drop. They share the same religion, they share the same culture. White women are starting to get into African music now. That's starting to make a way in the UK, especially, and so you're gonna start seeing more of these relationships. And African men are, especially in the UK, playing the beautiful game themselves, being more footballers out there of African descent. And guess what? Those locker rooms change, and so will partners change over time. So this is just a tipping point to what will eventually happen over time. I mean, comment down below. Well, if you believe that this is indeed the case, and third generation, it'll go up to 40 to 45%. Fourth generation, it'll only increase. And as he says here, the longer community is in the UK, the more of it out partners. It's about time, not values, and it is true. It's only a matter of time before UK-born African men will be dating at a rate of UK-born Caribbean men and Caribbean men in general. Let's continue.
Versus 22% for African men overall. So when you strip out the first generation, the UK-born Africans are already halfway to the Caribbean numbers. So I ain't making no judgments here, but give it another 20, 30 years, another generation, and black African men in Britain will probably look statistically identical to black Caribbean now. I bet you didn't see that coming. So what looks like, I guess, a moral difference between two black communities is actually just a settlement timing difference, in my opinion. The Caribbean community is ahead of the African community by a generation or two, and the numbers are traveling in the same exact direction. And again, I'm not trying to make excuses. I ain't making excuses for my brothers, but it's an explanation and it shows the difference. So is it true black men don't date black women in the UK? No. 72% of us are in a relationship with black women, and that is a top line fact. But is there something happening specifically with black Caribbean men? Yes, obviously. Literally,
that number is going to start dropping. It's 72% of, once the baby boom generation starts dying out, once Gen X starts dying out, and it starts to get to millennials and zennials and Gen Alphas, those numbers are going to start dropping. They're going to start dropping. So from 72%, it'll go to 68%. 68%, it'll go to 60%, and if not 50%. That is how pervasive societies are in the UK. A society which is colonial. Yes, there are racist ties leaning towards that, but it's the same thing if you go into Western Europe. If you go into places like Belgium, go to places like Switzerland, go to places like France, really go to places like France, where it's more of a North African, more of a North African slash sub-Saharan African mix, really. But they're starting to develop their own cultures out there. You go into Western Europe, not so much Italy, but they're starting to drift into this sort of things. It's really a pervasive thing that's going on there, especially when there are more African populations being pervasive in these areas, because you don't see the more Caribbean men tend to stay to the UK. African men tend to move into the continent. And because again, especially Nigerians, they'll travel anywhere. We have a comment with Chanel. I knew she'd be there. Of course, I could contribute to the subject. From the time I started dating, I've only been with black men. Been married twice, both times to black men with 4 good kids. I'm not going. Yeah, well, Chanel, we know you, darling. We know you, and God love you for your comment. Thank you so much for your comment. But we know that you are like a lot of these British ladies. They will. They love black men to a fault, and they will continue to do so. But the thing about it is, in dealing with that subject, with the what you're saying there, Chanel, it's starting, and this is why this whole subject was about. This is starting to traipse into not only UK culture but American culture, and definitely Canadian culture. Hugely into Canadian culture, which is more multicultural to begin with. That's the multicultural mosaic we are trying to build here since the 1960s. But it is very, very much into into Canadian culture. But more so, it's starting to develop in the U.S., where black men were married at black men and black women were married at an 83% clip in the previous census. The last census, it's gone down to 79, and I am definitely sure that'll drop to more of a UK number of 72% within the next two censes or censi, either one. But yeah, especially with African Americans looking for women who are indeed fit, feminine, friendly, cooperative, submissive. They're going to start looking at white women. Those barriers are starting to drop. They're starting to lower. They're starting to lower, ladies and gentlemen. The more societies live, even if they come from stratified and hated and racial beginnings. It's starting to change. It's starting to change. But we know you're a part of that. A part of that. Of that love, and you know what? Love who you love. Simple as that. What can we do? But listen, you love black men. You love black men. You know how many white women love black? Holy Jesus! I ain't even gonna go there. But let my man finish. Let's continue.
Of us are in a relationship with Caribbean women, and it's barely half. And nearly 1 in 3 are with a white British woman. That is not the same story as black men are done with black women. It's a Caribbean specific story about a community that arrived a little bit earlier and we integrated a bit deeper, and now statistically we are shrinking. Now look, I don't have a clean answer for what to do about this, but I am one of the 47% of Caribbean men whose dating history has been majority black women. I've said that on this channel many times. People want to look at Love is Blind and make their conclusions, but that was a bit of fun. But I'm not here to judge anybody, right? I'm not here to blast the other 50+% of men, because, we're all trying to work out this British Caribbean thing. Do I think that dating within your race is a way to keep our community stronger? Do I think that we should be building within community? Of course I believe that. That is one of my beliefs as a person, as a man. But I understand all the layers and all the reasons why some black men are struggling. They don't see race, although I hate that term. They just think, oh, love who you love, blah, blah, blah. And that's okay if you don't believe that dating and marrying is truly political. In my opinion, it is a political decision. It is not a love decision. And sometimes you have to play politics. What I will say is, though, if we still want to be here as a community in 50 years, we need to stop pretending the numbers don't say what they say. And as always, all my stats are linked to the description. One of the biggest...
Very, very true. If I'm just going to keep this short and sweet. If black love is to continue, if black communities are going to continue, um, unfortunately, we still need to date amongst ourselves and build and marry ourselves and build communities amongst ourselves so that our dollar can and our futures can go further. Even though mixed race kids, speaking for Chanel in this instance, mixed race kids are considered black in the first place, but those mixed race kids, they can't literally, keep dating white. Some of them have to, date black in order to keep communities together, as I have with the love of my life as well. Let's continue.
Factors that affect our ability to marry, and also why I think many black women are also moving on from black men as a whole, is our financial situation. And if you want to know why the black economy is getting worse for black men, you need to watch this video right here. Don't forget to buy me a coffee. And also, guys,
thank you very much to our to Javin Palmer. Javin did a wonderful job in breaking down these views, and the thing about the UK, and the reason why I highlighted it so much, is that the UK is usually the precursor to where things are going in the rest of the Western world. It really is, especially when it comes to fashion, especially when it comes to TV shows, especially when it comes to culture, the UK usually has the pulse, and then it usually spreads out towards Canadian America. I've known this for years. I've known this, especially when it comes to fashion. Oh my God, the UKs are way ahead in the fashion department, but that's another subject altogether. With, but yeah, there tends to be a vibe in terms of that, and it's so true. But usually the UK is very much a precursor to what is going on in in North America, especially Canada and the US. And you're going to start seeing, those numbers, especially African American numbers and African Canadian numbers, start to drop over time. Interracial dating and interracial marriage is not going away. It's only becoming more pervasive in society, and you're going to start seeing a lot more. Again, as you say, more gorgeous kids, as Chanel said here. All kids are gorgeous. Within reason, all kids are gorgeous out here. Let me say that. But again, you're going to start seeing more mixed race kids coming out of these marriages, coming out of these dating scenarios, and it's going to go unabated as societies are more cosmopolitan. But now I'm going to run an Omaha here. I'm going to run an Omaha in this instance, and really, let me see. Here we go. I want to get to my history, and it's something that I saw, well, when I was at the gym before I got on the show today. Now, let me get to this history here. There we go. Let me go here. Yes. All right. I am there. Okay. I'm looking for. There we go. This little tidbit here from Umar Johnson, because he's been mentioned here all day, but he's going to tell you about, what he feels about interracial dating and marriage in the first place. And this is what Javen was talking about all through the ceremony. But I thought this was a bit poignant, so I'll end on this. Let's continue.
That he hired to come in here and clean this motherfucking apartment. Joe might not know who the fuck cleans it.
Something just hit me.
Shoot.
Are you mixed race?
No.
Or you a bunny hopper?
Yes.
That's why you have a liberal perspective.
That's not true. That's not
because you go home to a white woman.
Yes, but that's not true. I felt this way before I met my white girlfriend.
So help me understand how you could be so passionate about the black.
I'm passionate. I'm an objective thinker. I don't. If something makes sense.
So you have no loyalty to the black community.
No, I do have. I probably employ more blacks than you.
Okay. So help me understand that you employ more blacks than me, but you go home to a white woman. Why you don't have a black woman?
Because I fell in love with a white woman, not a black
Why didn't you fall in love with a black woman?
I did. I fell in love with a black woman. We broke up.
Okay. And why didn't you fall in love with another black woman?
I did that too. We broke up.
Okay. And why didn't you get another one and another one and another one until you found the right one?
Because I met a white woman that I fell in love with, and that's the person that
and
I
you're
went
being
to
disingenuous about
that's
something.
Not true.
And let me tell you what you're being disingenuous about.
Shoot.
Romance is a function of focus and opportunity. If I want to date an Asian, I'm going to put myself around Asian women so I can find one. If I want to date a Latino, I'm going to put myself around Latino women so I can date one. If you wanted to marry a black woman, you would have put yourself around black women so you can find one. So how did you end up with the Caucasian? No disrespect to her.
No, not at all. What I'm telling you is the places that I go socially are not just monolithic.
So what? I went to a white college, white job. I never bunny hopped.
Listen to my question. Let me answer you. That wasn't my priority. My priority wasn't, I'm not closed off to dating Latino women. I'm not closed off to dating Asian women. I'm not closed off to dating white women. So again, in my search for romance, all of those things were on the table.
But you do understand that by not being with a black woman, you undermine the success of the black community.
That's your opinion.
That's my opinion. Then tell me how the black community benefits from you having a white woman.
If I lend to the financial uplifting of that community, one. That's one thing. Two, if I'm helping to educate the people in that particular community, that's a benefit.
Does not your white woman benefit more from your economics than any black person?
Yeah, probably.
Exactly.
So why can't they both be mutually beneficial?
You want to know why? Because she belongs to the group that is responsible for the historical oppression of your race. So why would you voluntarily go over and marry into that? Because when you marry the woman, you don't just marry the woman or date the woman. You're dating her community and her culture. And given the history of us and them, why would you dare align yourself with that if you care about us?
Let me ask you a question.
The reason you have no business being with a Caucasian woman is although she nor her family may have participated in our oppression directly. She benefits from it.
That he hired to come in.
Oh, and I wanted to let that run all by itself. And you know what? The whole economic the ideology that Dr. Umar is is arguing in this instance has a tendency to be true in that if you marry outside of your race and if you die, a lot of that money, a lot of that generational wealth will seep outside of the race as well. So it is important to, even though there are those who will date slash marry outside of their race, it's important for the majority of that race to be dating and marry of their own, and that's where strong communities lie, and that's where a lot of, in terms of Bangladeshi, Indian, Muslim, and especially and white communities, they tend to marry in and of themselves, so generation stays within that racial construct, and you'll tend to have more. You need more black families. That's what I'm saying. Black families are there for a reason. But I had a few comments here from Chanel. She says here, um, yeah, Chanel says she's not going to switch. Hold on a second. Oh my gosh, I just ran up there. There we go. She raised them as black, and you have to keep them safe. And shout out for you, Chanel, for doing that. However, it is, but again, as you're right, because again, society will see them as black, especially first generation interracial mixed race. They'll tend to be seen as black, being the dominant genetic code, and we'll treat them as such, even though there will be a little bit more forgiveness because of the fact that they have a bit of white origin among them. But thank you for that comment there. But again, Dr. Umar Johnson, this is where this whole idea of being black and loyal comes from, is the fact that he deals it from an economic perspective, which is a point taken. But again, as one of the hosts from, I think it was from the Joe Budden podcast, was saying that he employs black people, so he's trying to, he does his part in terms of keeping black financial freedom alive and well. So there is a give and take there, but Dr. Umar Johnson has a point there. So shout out to, who is this here? The Furious J, for that little for that little, especially this the sound bites as well. Those are quite good as well. But let's get back full camera, ladies and gentlemen. It is so true that that indeed, if black love is indeed dead, no, it's not. It's not dead. It's not on life. It's not on. It's not near extinction. It's not on life support. It's in intensive care, I would say, very much in intensive care. When you have the likes of Caribbean, and it's in intensive care because of Caribbean men. Let's face facts. It's because of Caribbean men that we are here. But that is slowly changing. African men, especially second generation into third, fourth, and fifth generation African men, will start dating outside their race themselves, as barriers, religious barriers, familial barriers, cultural barriers will start dropping, because again, you know, African people tend to be Christian. Some are Muslim, but most tend to be Christian, and so that will start changing communities, like certain communities, like Somali communities, certain communities like Nigerian Muslim communities. They tend to be a little more closed off, so therefore, because they have religion on their side, so they'll tend to be more African diaspora based, if not within their own cultural, within their own national base, and so they'll continue to date and marry black. However, of those Christian communities, those are the ones that we're going to see the change in numbers, and those numbers will be very much mirrored in the United States, especially. I think those numbers are already there in terms of, I think, Canadian, because I don't have Canadian numbers. Canadian and UK numbers are very, very similar because they come from colonial backgrounds. And so they have shared history. So I would not have no doubt. I would have no doubt that those numbers will be of similar note. Not only in the UK but in Canada, but definitely in the US, those numbers are starting to change. 79% of black of still a 79% of black marriages in the US, and those that dropped from 83%, and that is showing that especially African American men are marrying at a greater clip interracially. Not so much African American women. African American women are still married at that 27% clip, as Caribbean people are married in the UK after the last census. Funny how that is. So we, African American women, Caribbean, UK Caribbean women, UK Caribbean, UK African women are very, very much race loyal. They tend not to date out of their race. A lot of people don't tend to date them. But again, I think UK African women, as African women in general, know that they are very much race loyal, and men are race loyal to them. But that is changing over time. So, is black love dead in the UK? It's an intensive care. Definitely intensive care, and definitely who put them in the hospital are Caribbean men in general. And thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live. We're going to get out of here on the 1:30 mark of the show, but shout out indeed to Javen. I just want to shout his name out again to Javen. Yes, here it is. Yes. No. Let me get his name again. Yes, I think it's here anyway. So let me go back. Yeah, there we go.
But he does well. He scraps back.
No, not there. I am looking towards. Where's Javen? Is this thing here? Let me see. No. To Javen. Here we are. My bad. To Javen Palmer, doing a wonderful job, doing wonderful things in the YouTube streets. Do go and like and subscribe to Javen Palmer. I think he's done wonderful work, and he's showing the parallels between not only UK culture but North American culture in vivid 1080 HD, and he should be commended for it. And again, he says black love in the UK is officially dead, but I think that's clickbait. But I think, is black love in the UK dead? Not necessarily, but it is on life support, and things are going to have to change, because I think African males, especially second generation African males, are going to help contribute to it, and those generations thereafter, as much as Caribbean men who have literally put it in the hospital, put it on damn near life support. But thank you very much for joining me here on Talk Live, sponsored by Steve's Tees tonight. But as always, sponsored by Duntalk, DUNTLK.com. Spring Summer line out now. And we're going to end it right here. We're going to be back with another show probably on the weekend. If not the weekend, definitely next week. But again, we're going to take a break for tonight, but for tomorrow night. But tonight it is after midnight here. But again, we're going to take a break on Friday, I believe. But do check out your local listings if we do have another show. But thank you very much, including Chanel, including Lana BK, for livening up the show and continuing the debate. But do comment down below of your feelings on black love in the UK and black love in your community, if indeed you are indeed inclined to do so, because this is a hot topic that is not going away anytime soon. So I'm going to close it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Talk Live on IG here. So I'm going to end that now, and thank you for joining me on Talk Live here on YouTube, and we'll be back with another show coming soon, either tomorrow night, Friday night, or sometime